After 30 years of a marriage where I lived like a widow despite having a husband, I, Lisa, unexpectedly came back to life. I returned to the second year after marrying my commanding officer husband, Ethan Carter. At this point in time, Ethan had brought home a delicate, helpless mother and daughter who needed care. And I, in this moment, had just reached my 3rd month of pregnancy. Knowing exactly what would happen next, I wrote my own name in advance on the official conversion form for permanent status, then went voluntarily to the hospital and ended the pregnancy. In this lifetime, I will never again devote myself without complaint to serving Ethan Carter and his longtime lover Sierra, like some old servant. Instead, I will pour my heart and strength into serving my country. And as for Ethan Carter and Sierra, that adulterous pair, I sincerely hope they suffer together for the rest of their lives. I just never expected Ethan Carter to refuse to divorce me. He wanted to trap me again, just like in the previous life, forcing me to work like a beast of burden for him and Sierra. Since that's how he wants it, he can't blame me for becoming ruthless. The winter of December in Northville was truly freezing. Bone-piercing winds, water turning to ice instantly. The stabbing pain coming from my hands made me look around in confusion. I realized I was standing at the edge of an open-air washing platform in the frigid wind, with 2 large basins filled to the brim with clothes that needed to be washed right in front of me. I turned and looked around, taking in the surroundings that felt both unfamiliar and familiar. The old-era buildings and the slogans typical of that time made me briefly think I was dreaming. When I lowered my gaze again to the bright red cotton coat in the basin, then noticed several pieces of children's clothing mixed in, and finally lifted my swollen, frost-bitten hands to examine them, I became certain I had been reborn. I had returned to the winter of 1981. This year was the 2nd year of my marriage to Ethan Carter. At this moment, I was already 3 months pregnant. The clothes in front of me were reminding me that I was currently washing laundry for Sierra, Ethan Carter's cherished white moonlight, and for her daughter Pearl. In my previous life, Sierra had accidentally sprained her hand and couldn't move it. So Ethan felt sorry for her and arranged for me to take care of the mother and daughter. Every day, I prepared good food and drinks for them, cleaned their place, washed their clothes, and even gave them treats I myself hesitated to eat: sugar, polished rice, fine flour, meat, and eggs, to boost their nutrition. Back then, I loved Ethan Carter. His words were an imperial decree to me. I diligently fulfilled my duty as a military wife, helping others, thinking for others, giving whatever I could. I always believed Ethan was helping Sierra out of pity because she was a struggling widow with a young daughter. I thought this was the traditional virtue of military officers and their families. It wasn't until later that I learned Sierra's so-called injury was all an act. She simply didn't want to wash clothes in the harsh winter and risk frostbite on her beautiful hands. So she used me, the foolish, obedient, never-complaining old servant. But she didn't just want a free maid. Sierra also wanted my job. Ethan Carter obeyed her every word and fulfilled her every request. The moment she hinted at wanting something, he immediately took action and gave her my job. Later, when Ethan earned military merit and got promoted, Sierra grew greedy for the position of a commanding officer's wife. She even instructed her daughter Pearl to push me, 6 months pregnant, causing me to miscarry and leaving me unable to have children ever again. Losing my job and my ability to bear children in an era like that meant my life had become predictable and bleak. I knew I wasn't good enough for Ethan Carter. I feared he would abandon me. So I became even more humble, even more willing to work myself to death for him. My thin, lifeless, worn-out appearance stood in stark contrast to Sierra's rosy lips, bright teeth, and radiant, polished beauty, 2 extremes living under the same roof. Ethan Carter grew more and more displeased with me. He didn't want to see me at all, so he sent me back to his hometown to take care of his parents. He claimed it was so I could fulfill my duties and allow him to focus on serving the country. In my past life, I felt guilty toward Ethan and was deeply grateful to him, so I devoted myself to caring for his parents. Because I couldn't have children, his parents often insulted me and blamed me for everything. Meanwhile, Ethan got rid of the burden that was me and lived freely with Sierra in the capital, enjoying a flourishing life with her. I worked tirelessly, without complaint, taking care of Ethan's parents for 30 years. When they passed away, I went to the capital to look for Ethan, only to discover that he and Sierra were calling each other husband and wife in public. Only then did I realize how laughable my entire life had been. Once I confirmed I had truly come back, I kicked over the basin filled with Sierra and Pearl's clothes. Whoever wanted to wash them could wash them, because I wasn't doing it anymore. I marched back to the place Ethan and I lived. The moment I stepped inside, I heard my movement, and the door of the room next to mine opened. Sierra poked her head out from her warm, cozy room. When she saw me, she forced a fake, pretentious smile and said, "Lisa, you're back. Did you finish washing the clothes?" I glanced at Sierra's disgusting, hypocritical face, slammed my own door shut, and locked it. I went straight to the bedroom, crouched down, and pulled out a box from the cabinet under the bed. Inside were the meat tickets, grain tickets, cloth tickets, and some cash that I had saved over the past 2 years of marriage with Ethan by scrimping and saving. Some of those tickets and cash had already been taken by Ethan to supplement Sierra and Pearl's living. Sierra and her daughter constantly had new clothes to wear, polished rice, fine flour, eggs, and meat to eat. They were raised fair-skinned, plump, and glowing with health. Meanwhile, because of malnutrition, my hair had turned dry and yellow, and despite being 5'6", I weighed barely 90 pounds. My clothes were patched over and over, and I only threw them away when they were impossible to repair. In my past life, my thriftiness ended up benefiting everyone but myself. In this lifetime, I would never let that happen again. I took out all the cloth tickets, meat tickets, grain tickets, and money, stuffed them into my pocket, and walked out immediately. Even if I were to give these things away, I would never let Sierra and her daughter take advantage of them again. I gave part of the cloth tickets, meat tickets, and grain tickets to the military families in the compound who truly needed help. Then, taking the remainder, I went to the public supply center and generously used the cloth tickets to order 4 sets of clothes for myself. With the meat tickets, I exchanged for 3 pounds of ribs, along with eggs and vegetables. After that, I returned home. As I approached the courtyard, I could see from afar the tall, straight figure of Ethan Carter. He was standing with his back toward me, talking to Sierra. She was holding her hand, eyes filled with tears. The moment she saw me, she proactively opened her mouth and said, "Lisa, you're back." Ethan turned around with a severe expression on his face. The first thing he did was question me. "What's going on with you? Why did you leave the clothes unwashed and throw them on the ground outside? And why did you ignore Sierra when she talked to you?" I stared at the man for whom I had wasted more than 30 years of my previous life. At this moment, Ethan was still in his youth, his features unbelievably handsome. In my past life, I had loved Ethan's face to death. I once swore I would go through fire and water for him without hesitation. But after living through life and death, now that I saw the same face that once drove me mad with devotion, I felt no trace of love. Only disgust and hatred rising in my chest. Seeing me stare at him without speaking, Ethan's brows creased, and he scolded me sharply. "Why aren't you talking? I'm asking you a question." Seeing Ethan treat me so harshly, Sierra's eyes flashed with a hint of satisfaction. Then she spoke in a delicate tone. "Lisa, did I do something wrong?" Sierra looked at me gently and said, "Did I make you upset? If so, you can just tell me. I'll change." In my past life, the old Lisa had been foolish, as if her mouth had been glued shut. She never defended herself, letting the smooth-talking Sierra slander her and pin every accusation on her. But after reliving a whole lifetime, this Lisa was no longer that stupid. I glanced at the other residents of the compound, who were returning from work one after another, then raised my voice deliberately. "Comrade Sierra, your injured hand means you can't wash clothes or do housework. That's my fault. I sincerely wanted to help you wash your clothes, cook your meals, and clean your home for you. But unfortunately, my body just can't handle the strain." As I raised my voice, everyone returning from work stopped in their tracks and looked our way. Ethan felt the weight of their gazes and tried to stop me, but I ignored him and continued even louder. "I actually fainted earlier while washing your clothes. I lay on the ground for quite a while, and no one came to help me. I'm pregnant, you know. If this keeps up, forget the baby. I might not even last myself. Hearing me say that, Ethan finally remembered that I was pregnant. If you're pregnant, why aren't you resting? I'd love to rest, I said. But aren't you the one who feels sorry for Comrade Sierra because her hand is injured and she can't take care of herself? You asked me to help her. These days, she can't use her hand at all, so all the housework has fallen onto me. It's all my fault. How could my body be so weak? It's all my doing. I'm so sorry. I put on a guilty expression and apologized loudly. By then, the neighbors had gathered around us. The wife of Director Lee spoke first, looking at me with sympathy. Lisa, you silly girl. On a freezing day like this, and you're pregnant, yet you're still washing clothes for someone else? What can I even say? Mrs. Zhao joined in. Exactly. Pregnant daughters-in-law in other families are spoiled and cared for. But you're pregnant yourself, and instead of protecting your baby, you're doing chores for someone else. Aren't you afraid of hurting the child? I replied quickly. I was just worried about Comrade Sierra. Her hand is injured, and she has a child to care for. Life isn't easy for her. You should be worrying about yourself, Mrs. Zhao snapped. Look at you, what a state you're in. Pregnant women need rest and nourishment. Don't you know that? Then she shot Sierra a cold glance. Look at her, fair-skinned, plump, glowing with health. And that injured hand looks perfectly fine to me. Besides, why should someone else do her chores? It's ridiculous. She only bullies you because you're soft-hearted and easy to push around. Sierra's face flushed bright red. Tears began streaming down her cheeks. She stomped her foot, covered her face, and ran back inside the house. Seeing this, Ethan's heart ached. He shot me an angry glare and hurried after her. Mrs. Zhao snorted. Shameless little hussy. Director Lee's wife sneered. Cry in front of everyone like that. What an act. With that performance, it's a shame she isn't an actress. Trying to look simple-minded and sincere, I said. Comrade Sierra isn't like us. She's from the city. She can't stand even the slightest grievance. Pah! Mrs. Zhao spat. That little act of hers only works on silly girls like you. Then she sighed. Lisa, you work yourself to the bone. Don't you ever think about anything? What do you mean? I asked. If you keep being this foolish, your man is going to get stolen. I gasped and covered my mouth. That can't be, right? Mrs. Zhao lifted her brows. Hard to say. You'd better keep an eye on Ethan. Don't let that fox of a girl lure him away. They won't, I said quickly. They're just friends. Ethan just feels sorry for her because she doesn't have a husband. He only wants to help Comrade Sierra. I added, he even gave Comrade Sierra and her daughter the meat tickets, grain tickets, and cloth tickets from our home, and he gives Comrade Sierra $50 every month. Director Lee's wife and Mrs. Zhao both widened their eyes in shock. Keeping an innocent and clueless expression, I told them everything about how Ethan Carter had been supporting Sierra and her daughter. They stared at me like I was some alien, their eyes full of sympathy as they shook their heads. Knowing those two, it wouldn't be long before news of Ethan and Sierra's affair spread through the entire compound. After venting my grievances, I felt relieved enough to go home and cook ribs and steamed eggs to nourish myself. Dinner was ready soon. I ate 2 big bowls of rice with rib soup and steamed eggs, and I felt my whole body regain its strength. With food in my stomach, I cleaned the dishes, washed the pots, and returned to my room to lie down and think about what to do next. Based on the timing, it was almost the moment in my previous life when my work was supposed to be officially confirmed. Back then, the form for my permanent employment had been taken by Ethan, who wrote Sierra's name on it instead of mine, claiming Sierra needed the job more than I did. Sierra replaced me, became a formal employee, and from then on accompanied Ethan through life, enjoying love and stability with him. In this life, I absolutely wasn't going to be stupid enough to hand over my job to Sierra. If Ethan wanted to care for Sierra and her daughter so much, wanted to take care of them for a lifetime, then I would grant his wish. I would end the pregnancy and divorce him. Thinking through all of this, I eventually drifted off to sleep. I didn't know when Ethan returned. When I woke up in the morning, I discovered Ethan, unusually, was in the kitchen making breakfast. The moment he saw me come out, he placed breakfast on the table and called out, "Lisa, breakfast is ready." I walked over and sat down. Ethan handed me a pair of chopsticks. Lisa, the house still has some grain tickets, meat tickets, and cloth tickets, right? Go grab some and send them over to Sierra later. Winter is too cold. Their clothes are too thin. They'll freeze. Sierra and her daughter had multiple outfits, rotating through them, and although they were coarse, they had plenty to wear. Meanwhile, the cotton coat I was wearing was the one I made for my wedding. I only had that one, and I'd been wearing it for 2 years straight. Ethan ignored all of this completely. His concern for Sierra and her daughter was painfully obvious. My chest tightened. I lowered my head and sipped my porridge without responding. Ethan assumed my silence was agreement and kept speaking. Oh, and Sierra's daughter is at the age when she needs proper nutrition. She can't go hungry, so send all the meat tickets to them too. That was the last straw. I couldn't hold it back anymore. There aren't any cloth tickets or meat tickets left, I said. How could there not be? Ethan frowned. Lisa, you're a military family member. You must put the people first. Think what the people think, and share what the people need. I took a sip of porridge, set the bowl down, and asked slowly, when you say helping the people, do you mean helping all people in need? Or just helping Comrade Sierra? Ethan froze. He never imagined that the quiet, obedient version of me would say such a thing. Pretending not to notice the embarrassment on his face, I began counting on my fingers. The family on the west side, Comrade Wu's place, is in real hardship. Their 3 children don't even have proper clothes. In the dead of winter, they're barefoot. As a military wife, I absolutely can't watch them suffer like that, so I gave them all the cloth tickets so they could buy clothes. Oh, and the instructor on the south side, Instructor He. Their family has an elderly mother who's been sick, and there are 6 or 7 people living under one roof. I heard they haven't eaten meat in days. The whole family is so thin they look like bamboo sticks. They're the ones who truly need help. So of course I sent the meat tickets to them. Ethan's face went livid, dark as if he'd just swallowed something foul. Wasn't he always preaching about how helping Sierra and her daughter was helping the people? Well, I'd just shown him who actually needed help. After being smacked in the face by my words like that, Ethan was left speechless and humiliated. After breakfast, he headed straight to his unit. I tidied myself up and left soon after. According to the timeline from my past life, today was the day I was supposed to receive my notice about being confirmed as a full-time employee. When I arrived at my workplace, the supervisor, just like in my previous life, handed out the official employment confirmation forms. Back then, I'd taken it home, happily shown it to Ethan, discussed it with him, and then he had casually given my job to Sierra, saying she needed it more. In this life, there was no way I'd make that mistake again. I wrote my own name neatly and firmly at the top of the application form. After finishing, I glanced at the registration form the supervisor also handed out, the one for applying to volunteer in the Northern Frontier Development Zone. I filled in my name on that form as well and handed it back. The supervisor looked at me in surprise. Why do you want to go to the Northern Frontier? Isn't Ethan Carter about to become a unit commander? Did he agree to this? This is my decision, I said calmly. Right now, my heart is set on serving my country. Ethan is a soldier. He will certainly support my choice. You two really are exceptional, the supervisor said, giving me a thumbs up as he took the forms. Before leaving, he reminded me, if you're selected to go to the Northern Frontier, you'll need to depart on the 5th of next month. I checked the date. There were still more than 20 days left. Plenty of time to prepare. That afternoon, on my way home, I ran into several neighbors, all subtly probing for details about Ethan and Sierra. 3 women together make a whole drama troupe. Naturally, their eyes were full of sympathy as they hinted and muttered accusations about Sierra being shameless. It was clear that Director Lee's wife and Mrs. Zhao had spread the news. Everyone in the compound had received help from me before. They all sided with me, pitying me, calling out Sierra for her shameless behavior. A few even gave me ideas, suggesting I report Sierra for sabotaging a military marriage. But I had no intention of doing that. Even though I despised Sierra and Ethan for being so shameless, I didn't want revenge. If they didn't go too far, I was willing to divorce Ethan and let them be together. As I was thinking this, a neighbor told me something unexpected. Sierra had gone to the hospital earlier in the day and went straight to see Dr. Wang, the obstetrician. They stayed behind closed doors for a long time. The neighbor wondered aloud if Sierra might be pregnant and told me to be careful. My expression didn't change, but inside, my heart turned ice cold. I knew exactly why Sierra had gone to the hospital. Ethan had been promoted. They were planning to do the same thing they did in my past life, target me and the baby in my belly. Since Sierra refused to change, she couldn't blame me for what would come next. I took long strides back home. Sure enough, the moment I arrived at the door, I saw Sierra standing there. Her eyes held a provocative gleam. I unlocked the door, and she followed me inside. Once she closed the door behind us and made sure no one else was around, she dropped her act entirely. "Lisa, you did that on purpose, didn't you?" she snapped. I grinned. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "You're still pretending?" Sierra snapped. "Last night you deliberately said those things in the courtyard, and you even talked behind my back with Mrs. Zhao and Director Li's wife, ruining my reputation and Ethan's. You're completely unreasonable." "Ruining your reputation?" I stared at her with genuine confusion. "What reputation do you even have? You're a widow whose husband is dead, hanging all over another woman's husband every day. You eat the food he buys, spend his money, and cling to him day and night. Is that something a woman with dignity would do?" She clearly hadn't expected someone as soft-spoken and tongue-tied as me to fight back like this. Sierra was stunned, speechless for a moment. I let out a cold laugh. "Don't bother pretending anymore. I know exactly what you are. You're just relying on whatever past relationship you had with Ethan to scam him for food and money, trying to keep him dangling at your side. If you really loved Ethan, would you have abandoned him back then over another man?" My words hit her right in the heart. Her face darkened into a shade like pig liver. "Lisa, so this is who you really are? Playing innocent while hiding your claws? I underestimated you." I shot back immediately. "Compared to you, I'm nothing. You're an absolute master at pretending." I had never spoken to her so directly before, and Sierra couldn't take it at all. "Look at you," she sneered viciously. "You look so plain and pitiful. If I hadn't left back then, do you really think Ethan would have married you? He married you because he had no choice. You were just the obedient maid he needed. He never loved you. And even if Ethan does love you," I replied coolly, "what good has it done you? You're still like a rat hiding in the gutter, sneaking around with him in the dark. If you have the ability, why don't you make him divorce me and marry you openly?" Sierra's face flushed like someone splashed dye on it. "You think just because you're pregnant, you can do whatever you want? I'll show you today. Let me tell you, Lisa, even if I kill the child in your belly right now, Ethan won't feel the slightest bit of pity for you." She wasn't lying. After all, in my past life, that was exactly what had happened. Though back then, Sierra had manipulated her daughter into pushing me. But in this life, was she planning to do it herself? Fine. If she wanted a fight, I'd give her one. I sneered and added even more fuel to the fire. "What a touching, earth-shattering love story. Are you sure you really love Ethan? Or are you just using him as a backup plan? The man you truly loved is dead. Nothing left but a box of ashes. Now that Ethan's career is taking off and he's about to get promoted, suddenly you come running back? Please. Everyone can see what you're after." I stepped closer, my voice dripping with contempt. "You want to have an affair with Ethan? Then just do it. But stop pretending you're some virtuous saint while acting like a homewrecker." Sierra stared at me like she'd seen a ghost. I'd always been honest, gentle, and never said harsh words to anyone. She never imagined I would expose every dark, filthy thing she'd been doing. Rage twisted her features, her expression turning hideous as her ugly intentions were laid bare. Furious beyond reason, Sierra lunged at me. "Lisa, you want to die? I'll kill you today." But I was already prepared. I didn't dodge. Instead, I planted my foot firmly and kicked her as hard as I could. Sierra's entire focus had been on my stomach, her intention written clearly across her face. She wanted to kill the baby inside me. What she didn't expect was that I would strike first. My kick landed solidly. I was strong from years of heavy labor. She, on the other hand, had hands so delicate they'd never touched cold water. We weren't even on the same level. She cried out in pain and crashed to the floor with a loud thud. Watching her fall like a beaten dog, I let a cold smile spread across my face. Then, in one smooth motion, I threw myself to the ground as well and let out a wail loud enough to shake the heavens. "Help! Somebody come quickly! Sierra hit me! My stomach! It hurts so much!" I screamed at the top of my lungs. With my cries echoing through the courtyard, all the neighbors rushed out of their homes. The moment they saw me lying on the ground, clutching my belly and wailing as if my heart were being torn apart, Director Lee's wife was the first to sprint toward me, followed by Mrs. Zhao. "What happened?" "Sierra. She hit me. My stomach, it hurts so badly." I kept my hands pressed against my belly, crying out in agony. On the other side, Sierra staggered to her feet in a daze. When I kicked her earlier, her nose had slammed into the table, and now blood was pouring out uncontrollably. Hearing me accuse her, Sierra tried to defend herself. No, it wasn't. It wasn't me. It was Lisa. She didn't even finish the sentence before Mrs. Zhao shoved her hard, cutting her off. Director Lee's wife seized the opportunity and kicked Sierra squarely, knocking her back to the ground again. She let out a shrill cry of pain, but not a single person here felt sorry for her. Her crying accomplished nothing. Sierra had always cared only about acting pitiful in front of Ethan Carter. To the rest of the courtyard residents, she carried an air of superiority, always looking down on them. But I was different. I was the kind one, the person who never played tricks, never acted two-faced. I had helped many families here. So everyone rushed toward me, surrounding and protecting me, while a few who had long disliked Sierra stepped right over her to get to me. "Hurry! Someone take Lisa to the hospital. She's pregnant. If something happens to the baby, what are we going to do?" At that moment, Zhao Wenshu returned from his mission. He immediately stopped his jeep, scooped me up, and helped me into the vehicle. As we drove out of the courtyard, I glanced out the window and saw Sierra, her face smeared with blood, staring blankly in the direction of the departing car. She had probably never imagined that the quiet, meek Lisa would dare to fight back like this. After all, being the first to attack and slander others had always been her specialty. Her sharp tongue, her constant tattling to Ethan, her schemes with Pearl to set me up. They used to hide in corners, laughing while Ethan scolded me. In her eyes, I was a hopelessly stupid, slow-witted fool. Someone who could be crushed without effort. No wonder she was dazed, completely unable to understand how I had suddenly become someone who pushed back. I curled my lips into a cold smile. This was only the beginning. Every grievance I suffered in my past life, I would collect it all back in this one. When we arrived at the hospital, I was quickly wheeled into the obstetrics examination room. The doctor assigned to me was the same one who had operated on me in my past life. Dr. Wang Tingting, Sierra's biological cousin. Earlier that day, Sierra had gone to see her. They had closed the door and talked for a long time. I knew exactly what they were plotting. Wang Tingting barely examined me before declaring that I had suffered severe internal injuries, that I was already miscarrying, and that I needed immediate surgery. She also claimed my uterus and fallopian tubes were damaged to varying degrees and might need to be removed. The people who had brought me didn't understand medical terms. Whatever Wang Tingting said, they believed. I was pushed directly into the operating room. As Wang Tingting began preparing for the surgery, tears streamed down my face. Mrs. Zhao Wenshu's mother, and Director Lee's wife stood by my side, holding my hands and comforting me. Both of them were genuinely heartbroken for me. "Lisa, you're still young," one of them said softly. "This was just an accident." "She'll have other children in the future," someone murmured. I grabbed Director Lee's wife's hand and lowered my voice. "Sister Lee, please go find Director Zheng for me. You must get him here immediately." Director Zheng was the most authoritative OBGYN specialist at the hospital. Hearing me specifically ask for him, Sister Lee froze for a second, then realized what I meant. "Lisa, wait here. I'll go call him right now." While Sister Lee rushed out to find Director Zheng, Wang Tingting couldn't wait any longer and pushed me straight into the operating room. Just like in my previous life, she began the procedure on me. I could feel my child slipping away, the pain spreading through my body, and I saw the cruelty and coldness in her eyes. Just as she lifted the scalpel, ready to cut out my fallopian tubes, the operating room door swung open. Director Li's wife hurried in with Director Zheng right behind her. Director Zheng immediately stopped Wang Tingting. "Step aside and let me examine her." He was a seasoned gynecologist with decades of experience. Compared to him, Wang Tingting's methods were nothing. Perhaps because she knew she was guilty, her hands trembled so badly she couldn't even hold the scalpel properly. Crying, I told Director Zheng that Wang Tingting had wanted to remove my uterus and fallopian tubes. His face darkened like the bottom of a burned pot. "Her uterus and fallopian tubes are perfectly fine. Why would you remove them? What kind of doctor makes such decisions?" He couldn't understand Wang Tingting's actions. It was a serious medical malpractice case. She was suspended immediately and placed under investigation. I was sent back to a ward. Lying on the bed, tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. In both of my lives, I had been unable to keep my child. In my past life, I had been powerless, tricked, and harmed by Sierra. But this time, I had chosen to give up the baby myself. I knew Sierra would never allow this child to survive. She was waiting to take her place as the commander's wife. And the doctor who had operated on me, Wang Tingting, was Sierra's cousin. In my past life, after Sierra's daughter Pearl pushed me down, it was Wang Tingting who performed the surgery. My child shouldn't have died. I shouldn't have become infertile. But Sierra and her cousin were vicious, colluding together to kill my child and destroy my womb. Even after being reborn, I still couldn't protect my baby. But this time, I would not let Wang Tingting go free. Director Zhen was a responsible, principled doctor. In the end, Wang Tingting was fired for severe medical malpractice. Ethan Carter didn't come back until 3 days later. When he pushed open the ward door, a chill followed him in. I half sat up in bed, looking at him. His handsome face was rigid with anger, not worry. There was no concern for me, no grief over losing our child, only irritation and disgust. My heart grew colder and colder. I watched as Ethan walked over to the bed, closed the door behind him, and began scolding me ruthlessly. "Lisa, I always thought you understood the bigger picture. I never expected you to disappoint me like this. You grew jealous because I cared for Sierra, and you went around ruining her reputation everywhere. Do you have no awareness of how a military family member should behave? You've really let me down." He was disappointed because his beloved woman's cousin had been fired. He resented that because of me, Sierra was being talked about and pitied. He felt distressed seeing Sierra criticized and judged. But I was the one who lost his child. And he didn't feel a shred of pain, not even the slightest regret. Ethan had no idea what was going through my mind. He continued lashing out, venting all his anger on me. Finally, he concluded firmly, "This time, you were wrong. After you're discharged, you must go apologize to Sierra. Ask for her forgiveness." I stared at him, this young, handsome Ethan Carter so full of righteous anger, thinking of the man he would become 30 years later, and my heart sank even further. The features of the powerful, high-ranking Ethan Carter from my previous life overlapped perfectly with the man standing before me now. Whether in my past life or this one, he had never, not even for a moment, considered my feelings. His heart and eyes had always belonged to Sierra and her daughter. I had known the truth long ago. I no longer needed any confirmation. I spoke clearly, each word firm and deliberate. "You're right. I really don't understand the big picture. I'm not qualified to be the wife of Commander Carter. So Ethan, let's get a divorce." Ethan's expression froze instantly. He looked as if he couldn't believe what he'd heard. "What did you say? Divorce?" "Yes, I want a divorce. We should file the application today." Hearing the word come out of my mouth shook him visibly. For the first time, Ethan looked genuinely unsettled. "Lisa, what do you mean? Why should we get divorced? Aren't we doing fine?" "Fine." I couldn't stop the laugh that escaped me. "Ethan, we've known each other for 5 years. In these 5 years, have you ever cared about me? Do you know what I think? What I need?" Ethan fell silent, unable to answer. From the beginning of our relationship, I had been the only one giving. He had enjoyed my tireless care, my devotion, my willingness to place him at the center of my world. His words had been law to me. He knew how humbly, how desperately I loved him to the bone. And because I had lowered myself so much, why would he ever need to pay attention to me? Why would he bother to learn what I thought? His heart was always with Sierra. He only ever wanted to give to her. Fine. If that's what he wanted, I would grant him his wish. I laid bare the obsession in his heart. Sierra said she's the woman you truly love, that you've carried feelings for her for years, that you'd do anything for her. If that's the case, then I'll fulfill your wish. Let's divorce. But instead of admitting anything, Ethan panicked. No, it's not like that. Lisa, you misunderstood us. There's nothing between Sierra and me the way you think. Is that so? I stared at him. Then tell me, what is your relationship? You give half of your salary to Sierra and her daughter, yet you've never given me a single cent. You worry about Sierra not having enough clothes. You worry about Sierra and her daughter being cold and hungry. Have you ever once looked at what I wear? What I eat? Ethan had no answer. After a long moment, he finally muttered, I only pity her. There are plenty of pitiful people in this world, I said. Why don't you give your salary to them? Why only Sierra? Ethan's face flushed with embarrassment and irritation. Lisa, I know my actions made you misunderstand. I was wrong. I'll change from now on. We're not getting a divorce. He refused. That surprised me. He clearly liked Sierra so much, so why did he insist on sneaking around? Why not give Sierra a rightful place at his side? I couldn't understand it, but regardless, the divorce was not negotiable. If Ethan wouldn't agree, I would make sure he had no choice. The next day, I was discharged. I had barely rested for a few minutes at home when Sierra knocked on my door and walked in. There was a scar across her nose. It looked ridiculous. I stared at her coldly. What are you doing here? You're not welcome. She glanced around to confirm no one else was present, then sneered. Lisa, I didn't expect you to pull a move like that. I underestimated you. I looked at her without emotion. You didn't come here just to say that, did you? Of course not. She snapped. You're using retreat to advance, raising the idea of divorce so that... I already know about your plan to divorce Ethan, Sierra said smugly. Well, Lisa, you're actually pretty smart, choosing just the right moment to pull this stunt. Do you really think Ethan refuses to divorce you because he can't bear to? He has no choice. And what exactly do you mean by that? I asked calmly. Ethan just got promoted. You know how strict party discipline is right now. Even the slightest scandal could ruin his future. So Ethan is only keeping you around for the sake of appearances. That's the only reason he won't divorce you. I see. So Ethan is staying married for his career. That means your dream of sneaking around with him might not work out after all, doesn't it? Sierra's face twisted in embarrassment. Lisa, mind your manners. If you dare to do it, why be afraid of being called out? I replied flatly. I'm not wasting time arguing with someone as uncultured as you, Sierra snapped. I came here today specifically to inform you. Ethan can't divorce you for the sake of his future. But to make it up to me, he agreed to let me take your job. Lisa, you're about to become unemployed. Is that so? Well, we'll see. I smiled. Feeling triumphant, Sierra left. She really thought stealing my job was settled, that I would give it up because of Ethan, that she would rise just like in my past life and live comfortably again. She thought too much. Later, Ethan returned home carrying a lot of groceries, ribs, eggs, even fish. His attitude toward me was noticeably better. He took the initiative to talk to me, even brought me a bowl of warm brown sugar water before heading into the kitchen to cook dinner. Soon a table full of fragrant dishes was ready. He called me to eat. I sat silently and ate my fill. He kept watching me cautiously, waiting for the right moment. Finally, after I set down my bowl and chopsticks, Ethan spoke. Lisa, I need to talk to you. I nodded for him to continue. Ethan cleared his throat. I thought about things last night. I realized I was wrong. I shouldn't have gotten so close to Sierra just because I pitied her. I shouldn't have neglected you as my wife. I understand my mistake now. I'll change. I'll avoid interacting with Sierra from now on. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him quietly. After making his promise, his tone suddenly shifted. Lisa, Sierra doesn't have a job right now. Raising a child alone is hard for her. As a soldier, my duty is to help the people, and I've thought of a solution. Once Sierra has a stable job, she'll be able to support her daughter, and I won't have any reason to help her anymore. So, could you give your permanent employment slot to Sierra? I couldn't help laughing. He was saying exactly what Sierra had said earlier. If I hadn't lived through all of this before, if I didn't already know how it would end, I probably would have believed Ethan. What a pity. I shook my head. Why should I give my job to Sierra? We have a much better solution. Ethan looked confused. What solution? We divorce. Then you can fully devote yourself to taking care of Sierra and her daughter. Isn't that the best outcome for everyone? Ethan's expression instantly darkened. I said I will not divorce you. Why not? I asked with a gentle smile. You're my wife. Our relationship is fine. Why would we divorce? Our relationship is fine? I laughed softly. What a joke. If you cared even a little bit about me, if you cared about the child in my belly, you would have felt pain for losing our baby. You would have shown even a shred of anger toward the person who killed our child. But you didn't. I looked directly into his eyes. Ethan Carter, your heart is full of Sierra and her daughter. You're afraid Sierra won't have a job. You're afraid she'll be cold or hungry. But you don't have even the slightest bit of concern for me or for the child I lost. With a heart like that, why should I stay married to you? Ethan's expression twisted, ugly and strained because my words hit exactly where it hurt. He completely lost face. Lisa, how did you become so unreasonable? I became unreasonable? I asked calmly. Isn't it because of you? I've worked myself to the bone for you, done everything for you two, and that still wasn't enough? You wanted me to sacrifice even more? Sorry, but the world doesn't work that way. He protested stubbornly. Sierra and I aren't what you think. There's nothing improper between us. Why won't you believe me? I don't care what the two of you are, I said. I just want you to know, I'm not giving up my job for anyone. I emphasized each word slowly and clearly. And divorcing you is the best solution. You've been promoted, your salary has increased, and you have more than enough money to support Sierra and her daughter. Lisa, I'm not divorcing you, Ethan snapped. And you need to give up this ridiculous idea. I'm telling you, military marriages are sacred and must not be violated. Since you married me, you will be my wife for the rest of your life. Throwing down those harsh, rigid words, Ethan slammed the door and left. I sat quietly in the chair, feeling the cold seep through my bones. I thought that after everything I'd said, Ethan would be eager to divorce me. Instead, he refused, and even used the sanctity of a military marriage to threaten me. Why? In my heart, I already knew. Ethan had no real feelings for me. He only refused to divorce because a scandal would hurt his promotion, because he wanted me to give my job to Sierra, because he wanted to keep using me as his obedient old servant to care for his parents. Early the next morning, I went to my workplace. The supervisor called me in. Comrade Lisa, the matter about you volunteering for the Northern Frontier might fall through. What do you mean? I asked. Your husband, Commander Carter, came to see us. You must understand. First and foremost, you are a military family member, and only after that are you our employee. Your primary duty is to ensure a stable home front so the commander can serve with no worries. So your job may need to be adjusted. Hearing that much was already enough. I understood everything. In my past life, I'd been obedient and compliant, so Ethan had easily handed my job to Sierra. In this life, I refused to obey, so he simply used authority and pressure to force me out. Since Ethan wouldn't agree to divorce, I truly had no way out. I had no power to fight him. Even though he wasn't all-powerful yet, just invoking the phrase military spouse stability was enough to crush me. Leaving the workplace, I walked home in a daze. Sierra must have heard the news because she was waiting specifically to mock me. When she saw me return, she shrieked with a sharp laugh. Didn't you tell me not to worry about your job? And you still dare talk big? I looked at her face, and I truly wanted to slap her. Just as I was about to act, Sierra sneered and spoke again. Lisa, are you back to yourself yet? In our past life, you weren't like this. My raised hand froze midair. Her words made something deep inside me jolt. I forced down my impulse and took a long breath. What do you mean? I asked quietly. Sierra scoffed. Still pretending? Are you going to say you didn't get reborn? I stared at her, startled. In our past life, Sierra continued, you were timid and obedient. Everything in your world revolved around Ethan. If he said go down, you would never dare go up. And now, you actually dare rebel against him? You even dared scheme against me. If you hadn't lived once before, who would believe you suddenly became like this? Sierra sneered. Since she had already said things to this point, I stopped pretending as well. So you've been reborn too? Of course, she snapped. All because you kicked me that day. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't have had to live through these miserable poverty-stricken days. She curled her lip. 30 years later, life was changing every day. Nothing like now, with barely enough to eat, barely enough to wear, everything poor and backwards. Her disgust for the current life was written all over her face. And honestly, it made sense. In our past life, by the time she reached old age, she was pampered, wealthy, and living her best days beside Ethan Carter. A Western-style villa, servants and guards, endless delicacies. She had lived in luxury. No wonder she now found this life unbearable. Thinking of our past life, something stirred inside me. Since you've come back too, let's be honest. What do you want? My job? Or Ethan Carter's wife's position? Sierra giggled sweetly. Obviously, I want both. You can't have both, I said. Right now, you can only choose one. Which is it? Let me remind you, work is hard and exhausting. It's nowhere near as glamorous as being the commander's wife. Ethan is still young, with a bright future ahead. Don't you want to live a life of prestige? Sierra had spent decades in the past life enjoying luxury at Ethan's side, so no one understood his future prospects better than she did. I could see her wavering. She rolled her eyes. So what are you trying to say? I can help you get what you want, I said. As long as you make sure Ethan and I divorce, I'll keep my job. You marry him, you get to be the commander's wife, rising higher and higher. Sierra didn't just want to be the commander's wife. She wanted to be the wife of the future high-ranking Ethan Carter. The greed in her eyes was unmistakable. Finally, after a moment of contemplation, she asked, "How are you going to help me?" I smiled. "By letting you get what you want ahead of schedule." 2 nights later, something happened in the compound that shocked everyone. Sierra and Ethan Carter were caught stark naked in bed. By me, his legal wife. In the middle of the night, my cries and screams echoed across the compound, loud enough to wake the entire neighborhood. Lights flicked on in every house. When they saw me kicking open the door, Sierra tried to stop me. "Lisa, what are you doing?" We agreed. Ethan, meanwhile, was completely confused. This isn't what's going on. The two of them scrambled to find their clothes, but unfortunately for them, I had already snatched their clothes first and thrown them outside. Ethan exploded. "Lisa, give me my clothes. There must be some kind of misunderstanding. Let's talk." Talk? As if I would give him a chance. I screamed even louder, my voice raw and piercing. Within minutes, the room was crowded with spectators. My God, Commander Carter and Sierra, caught having an affair right in his own home. Is there no justice left in the world? No, it's not like that. Ethan tried desperately to deny it. Meanwhile, Sierra, completely naked, finally felt shame as all eyes stared at her. She frantically tried to hide, clinging to Ethan's arms for protection. Surrounded by so many people, Ethan was furious and humiliated. He shoved Sierra away. She fell forward, revealing everything, and although he was embarrassed, she was still his white moonlight. So Ethan hurried to wrap her in a blanket. Then he tried again to reach out to me. "Lisa, this can't be real. There must be an explanation." "Lisa, you have to help me explain," Ethan begged. I wiped my eyes with fingers still covered in chopped scallions, and tears instantly streamed down my face like rain. "You two sneaking around behind my back didn't just happen once. I've known for a long time that you've been having an affair." Then I turned toward the military district's political commissar, who had rushed over after hearing the commotion, and I cried with heartbreaking sorrow. Comrade Carter and Sierra have been carrying on for a long time. I discovered it before. Sierra even pushed me, causing my miscarriage. Ethan knew I lost the baby and that I was hurt, but he ignored me completely. He was afraid it would affect his career, so he warned me not to say anything. He even threatened me, telling me to give my job to Sierra. "Lisa, you're talking nonsense." Ethan's eyes nearly bulged out of his head. "Am I?" I shot back. "You can go ask my workplace leaders." I had already planned to respond to the organization's call and go volunteer at the frontier. I was ready to divorce and step aside for them, but they still refused to leave me alone. My tears, raw and genuine, made everyone around us bristle with anger on my behalf. "Lisa is too honest," one family member said. "Look at the clothes she wears. Just look at her. And look at that woman Sierra. No job, yet she dresses all fancy every day, eating well, drinking well. Exactly, another said. I heard Commander Carter gives half his salary to Sierra and her daughter. All the meat tickets, grain tickets, and cloth tickets go to them too. Poor Lisa lives on coarse cornbread. And she was pregnant, someone added sharply. Yet she was still forced to wash Sierra and Pearl's laundry. As more and more people spoke up, the commissar's expression grew darker and darker. Comrade Lisa, he finally said, you've suffered greatly. Military marriages are sacred and inviolable, not only to protect the wives of soldiers, but to restrain the soldiers themselves. We will absolutely give you a proper resolution. Ethan Carter was immediately suspended and placed under investigation. The military district leadership took the matter very seriously and formed a special team to look into it. Ethan's financial support of Sierra and Pearl had been done openly. It didn't even require a deep investigation. Everyone who knew something came forward and spoke. The fact that Sierra pushed me, causing the miscarriage, had been common knowledge. And the fact that Ethan went to my workplace and pressured my leaders to give my job to Sierra, that was ironclad evidence. Ethan's explanations were weak and completely unconvincing. The higher-ups were deeply disappointed in him. His future ended right there. As for Sierra, she was jailed for the crime of destroying a military marriage. She was utterly stunned. She kept screaming that she'd been framed, that I had manipulated everything, that I had agreed to let her and Ethan be together, that I was cruel, jealous, and couldn't stand to see them happy. No one believed her. Everyone thought she'd lost her mind. After all, who would give up a husband as promising as Ethan Carter? And in everyone's eyes, I was the honest, hardworking, long-suffering victim. Everyone in the compound knew I had been bullied by those two shameless people, that I had worked myself to the bone like an old ox. Sierra was desperate. In the end, she demanded to see me. I agreed. When I visited the detention center, Sierra looked haggard, puffy-eyed, her face sallow and dull. When she saw me, fury flashed in her eyes and she tried to leap up, but the handcuffs yanked her back down into her seat. Lisa, why did you set me up? She snarled. Why? I looked at her coldly. Even now, you still don't know why. You're really going to claim you don't understand what you did to me? I don't know, she shouted. Lisa, tell them. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding. You and Ethan are the ones whose marriage fell apart. You can't do this to him. He's going to be a high-ranking official. He can't be suspended, Sierra shouted, almost hysterical. I only let out a cold laugh. Why would I lie to the organization? You two destroyed a military marriage, engaged in an affair, violated conduct guidelines. That's all the truth. But it was you who told me to do it. You gave me the chance. She screamed. You did this on purpose to get revenge. Lisa, your heart is so vicious. Are you trying to kill us? You're not leaving us any way out. I nodded slightly. I didn't plan on fighting either of you. In the beginning, all I wanted was to divorce and go serve my country. But you and Ethan just wouldn't stop. Sierra, you tried to kill my baby. You wanted your cousin to make me infertile again, just like in the last life. Your heart is rotten. You're a demon. And Ethan, I took a breath. I already offered to divorce him, to step aside for the two of you, but he still refused to let me go. He wanted my job, and for the sake of his career, he still wanted to sneak around with you in secret. You two thought I was a fool. You thought you could keep controlling my life. Why? I stared directly at her. All I did was what I should have done. I simply took back justice for the unborn child who died unjustly in my past life, for the pitiful Lisa who suffered and died. In the end, Sierra was sentenced to 3 years in prison for destroying a military marriage. Ethan Carter was expelled from the military. I took that opportunity to file for divorce. The divorce went through surprisingly smoothly. The same day I received the divorce certificate, I joined the work team heading to the northern frontier. For more than 20 years in the northern frontier, I followed the organization wherever they needed me. I gave my youth to that land. I never once complained. Life there was harsh, but it was also fulfilling, full of meaning and pride. I earned multiple commendations for my contributions, and my name appeared numerous times in newspapers and on television. 20 years later, I returned to the capital to receive an award. The nation had grown and transformed. Walking through streets filled with brilliant lights, I felt overwhelmed with emotion. I was no longer the confused, hopeless woman from my past life. In this life, I lived with purpose, ambition, and dignity. The night before our team was scheduled to return, we went shopping for gifts for our colleagues. Passing by the entrance of a hotel, we saw heavily armed police officers restraining a man and handcuffing him. On the ground lay a bloodied, swollen corpse of a woman. My gaze drifted across the restrained man's face, and a strange familiarity made me stop in my tracks. I looked again. It was still that handsome face, but now marked by age and wear. The man looked at me. Our eyes met. He froze. His lips trembled as he silently mouthed two words. I tore my gaze away and looked down at the naked, lifeless, heavily made-up woman on the ground. Her pale face overlapped perfectly with the Sierra in my memories. I never expected to meet either of them again like this. Curling my lips slightly, I tightened my grip on the gift bag in my hand and walked away quickly. There is no place in life where paths won't cross again. Except this time, the reunion was nothing like our last life. Back then, I stood on a brightly lit street, staring at the powerful, high-spirited Ethan Carter and the elegant, noble Sierra, watching them walk side by side, surrounded by guards. Back then, I wanted to approach them to ask why, only to be struck by a speeding car and thrown into the air. Life itself does not change. We all come into the world with nothing and leave with nothing. The only difference lies in the choices we make. And I am grateful that in this life, I made the right one.